This is Anita Comeau from Prairie Edge Book and Music Store, and we are introducing Dr. Zimiga again. You've seen Dr. Zimiga before. He's talked to us for several different times, so we're going to do a little something different. Dr. Zimiga has been studying the restless business of treaties, the moon of popping trees, Teton Sioux music, and also Nation to Nation. I'm sorry, that's an out-of-print book. And another out-of-print book, Wool. What?
Yeah, Woolaton.
Wool, say it again?
Woolaton.
Okay, so then, and this is another out-of-print book, but hopefully it will be republished soon and reprinted with a new introduction by Dr. Zimiga.
Oh,
We're hoping. So now we have so I'm going to ask Dr. Zimiga about these books. And when he starts out with is a summary of has a linear world versus a natural world of Native America. Could you explain to us what the difference is between lineal and natural holistic?
yeah, well, one of the things that we all, as human beings, the humankind, we all come from cultures. Within that culture, what the culture describes various ways and behavior for values and for that makes what they believe in. And so, but one of the things is what the linear world, a lot of times that we, in Europe, was usually written, it was written by men. That became the document as the New Testament. And then you look at the Older Testament, and you look at, so those thoughts within that world, they perceived everything through the written word, a linear life. It was always, it's in the book. You know, there's, grandma says, if you want to know something, it's in the book, But that has changed. It changed in Europe to, the King James Version, which changed the whole concept of Christianity. Because then you have various other, an association how to relate to a divine spirit. Well, the other part is indigenous people pretty much, even in past, the Greeks and many of those, I call them primal First Nations, all related to nature. Nature was the underpinning, the way to educate oneself, but you were a part of it. You had a relationship, and that relationship could be we have symbiosis relationships, and those relationships tell us, how are we associated with it. For instance, by wearing this buffalo tie, Lakotas have a symbiotic relationship with the buffalo. It provided it food, it provided that. They even say at a time that if you look within their legends and stories, that the buffalo itself brought us from out of a cave. And so it's all part of myth and legends. And all of it, all humankind's, the best history that ever could be told comes from myth and legends. And we still practice some of those today. But many native tribes today still believe that we have a relationship with the elements. We have a relationship in either the four elements, be wind, water, fire, and earth or rock. Those are the things in the foundation of it. So that's, to answer that question, it takes you to consider yourself coming from a spaceship, and you're looking down on this place called Earth, and you see all these beings running around. And what are they doing? They're exhibiting different types of behavior and looking for knowledge and understanding. So I would like to start with, and even thinking about these books, is for the listener to have an open mind. For the person, if you read this, is because these are stories of generational change. We are not the same people that the Neanderthals that they said. Lakota say we come from our relationships to the buffalo and the eagle. Well, Clarence Darrow had a great argument over the origins of species. And some people says, no, we didn't originate from there. So we start naming those things. So the Europeans call themselves white. Lakota's sky. When you talk about skin, there's a varieties of shades of skin. Ha sapa, ha, that's your skin. Sapa is black. Ha ska is yellow. Ha sha is red. So it didn't mean that one was better than the other or had more logic to it, but it is how they approach life. And so it's interesting that some people say, well, we originated from the buffalo and the eagle, and you originated from monkeys. And people, oh, no, that was the argument. When they, looking at just the genetics of the new sciences. And so those are the kinds of things that you find in these books. If you go someplace, it's like an adventure. It's because if you only have a perceived kind of idea of what's right, wrong, or indifferent, then what you're doing, you're missing. You're not open yourself. You're not getting that exchange. So what you end up doing is you go back to a mindset. But this generational change, now we're into a whole new thing. So that's where linear comes in.
So, again then, so what is the concept of Wo Lakota?
Wolakota, it really means the whole concept of what is meaning be peaceful in your actions. So when I was teaching a class in Wolakota, it says, how do you remain peaceful within yourself and within people around you? To recognize and listening to them. That not saying my perceived ideas is if you forget yours and you listen to mine. So how do you establish peace between others? And so, or your relationship to the environment. I mean, the water we drink now, in one of these books written by the Teton Sioux, the lady that wrote this, she went and she looked at that transition that was going on. And Desmore was her name. Frances Dinsmore was her name. She went out and recorded that generation of people of that era. And so her book in there, our first in the subject, they are first subject people. It's not what somebody else wrote many, many years ago or centuries ago. She talked to people that were experiencing that. And in here, she meets, she finds out. And so there's a whole historical background about the indigenous in the Smithsonian. And so the wise people said, hey, we need to know, these differences. So Wola Kuta really means is how do you find peace within yourself and how do you find peaceful solutions.
So with tribal nations, they all have their own beliefs and their own societies. Was the European lineal teachings based on just generalized one size fits all, or were they broken up for each tribal nation?
Well, the nations became kingdoms. And so the king was, or the monarchy, was the ones that governed people, and that's probably today, the history you read in Western history. So what they did is that they had to have a fine to interpret the teachings. And so that's why the first part of the Hebrews, and it was written down by men about the creation. And then there was a battle between kingdoms. But they all agreed to create, there were two popes, created the right of discovery. That they could go to any indigenous land that they want, and they could they had the right to claim it. Now that was, and some of the Pope Gregory, he was kind of an eccentric man, but he changed, and so all the others became Protestants, all the various kinds of Christians, the Muslim people, the Muslim faith, and they all came from humble beginnings. The Muslims came from a camel rider, and he found that. And then you go to, in the United States, we have a lot of people that they talk about Brigham Young, but there's the man that originated was from New Hampshire that started the Mormon Church. And so you think of all the people, foreign people that have come to a place, and they've come with their ideas of governance, and they have to have something in which to follow. And so then you get the Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox Church in Russia. All those, but they all come from the same religion. And they probably have killed more people than the indigenous people. They would come, and there used to be in the United States, and the United States adopted it, their Supreme Court adopted the right of discovery. And then in the right of discovery, how they couldn't come because international law says, no, this is their land, so you came there to trade. And so you can't take their you can't claim it as indigenous land. So, and you see that happening throughout the world today. You know, we haven't changed too much. Matter of fact, we probably changed our clothes, but they're made in China now. None of us makers our own clothes. Or the language. Look at the language young people use today. And it's all related to technology. Technology becomes God. I mean, how can you go wrong without a cell phone or artificial intelligence? You know, all those things. So we believe that, and we use it every day. So that's the transformation that's coming. That transformation. But it takes, you have to take the knowledge base of every generational change. So there's an evolution that's going on in humans. But also within each individual, we have a mindset. But the other thing that we do have is, besides this evolution, we need to have an involution within ourselves to be a part of it, be a part of that change. So people look at the ancients or the First Nation people as just reference. So that's one of the things that's very important to remember as you pick up and you read these books. It's coming from those different generations.
Okay, Doctor, can you give us our closing statements? Because how can we still continue that natural, holistic mindset within this linear ideas of what's we are supposed to be,
Well,
or how we're supposed to be
I think if we
in
look,
the linear world?
excuse me, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, generational change is happening. The evolution is continuing to happen. It happens all the time. We are always evolving. The change is always consistent. One of the things we have to get back to that thought is because we're killing the earth. We say, oh, we want to take the earth. But the good thing about reading this is that more people now, you look at, they go to a national park and they walk through it, but they've got to have a McDonald's next there. Or we go to some of these islands, and out there we've built these lavish resorts, and we have the indigenous people serving. And I guess the point is that we have to realize the resources, those natural resources. You know, and it is not just a one-way street. It's not just assimilating. How we do that is acculturation. Acculturation is the key. And that's what this book, each one of them says, from each generation. And that's what we're going to cover.
Okay, and that will be in our next segment, okay?
All right, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Zimiga.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the people.
Yes.